teach the church. Odd number teach
Tamado.
So,
Number which is not usable by two churches.
a number which is not usable by two churches. Odd number teach
Odd number teach you maybe.
Tamado.
You yada. So
135 lots of church.
135 lots of church. Odd number teach yimata.
They
used to do.
Tamado.
So,
Number which is exactly two factors church.
number which has exactly two factors church. Prime number ki thingy yimata. Prime number ki tishi shayu mebe.
Tamado.
Shayu yata. So,
235 lots of church.
235 lots of church. Prime number ki tishi yimata. My mother, odd number to prime number nila moso moshe gewa tunjumune kyoshu mebe.
Tamado.
Shayu yata. So,
Mushima.
Mushimyata, odd number in a prime number ibe kada.
Teacher.
Odd number in a prime number ibe machata. So,
15 church.
15 church, odd number ibada. 15 church, odd number inde.
Number which is not usable by two image.
Number which is not usable by two in a odd number ibe kada. 15 church, prime number my badal. 15 church, prime number minde.
Number which has exactly two factors my image.
Number which has exactly two factors minor prime number minus kada. Prime number in a odd number ibe kada.
Teacher.
Prime number in a odd number ibe machada. So,
Two church.
two church, odd number ibada.
Teacher.
Two church, odd number my badal. Two church, odd number minde.
Number which is not usable by two my image.
Number which is not divisible by two minor odd number minus kada. Two church prime number ibada. Two church prime number inde.
Number which has exactly two factors image.
Number which has exactly two factors in a prime number ibe kada. My odd number in a prime number minus kada.
Teacher.
Odd number in a prime number minus machada. So,
7 church.
7 church, odd number ibada. 7 church, odd number inde.
Number which is not usable by two image.
Number which is not divisible by 2 in a odd number ibe kada. 7 church, prime number ibada. 7 church, prime number inde.
Number which has exactly two factors image.
Number which has exactly two factors in a prime number ibe kada. My odd number minor prime number ibe kada.
Teacher.
Odd number minor prime number ibe machada. So,
10 church.
10 church, odd number my mother. 10 church, odd number minde.
Number which is not usable by two my image.
Number which is not divisible by 2 minor odd number my kada.
10
Church, prime number my mother. 10 church, prime number minde.
Number which has exactly two factors my image.
Number which has exactly two factors minor prime number my kada.
10
Get some signal? Yes.
Digital church. My bata. Odd number ki image. Yata.
A number which is not divisible by 2 churches.
A number which is not usable by two church. Odd number ki imata. My bata. Odd number ki image. Yata.
135 lots of churches.
135 last by church. Odd number ki imata. Odd prime number ki image. Yata.
Odd number in Bahan, she prime number in Beach.
on the boy in Bakashi, brand the boy in Church, on the boy Kitini, Yimata, old brand the boy Kitishik, maybe Yata,
357 last of church.
357 last church, old brand the boy Kitishi, Yimata, my bata, old Nabota, old brand the Bonilla, Muso, Moshe. Tunje kone kewa shiku mepeche.
Tamaro.
Shiku yata. So.
Musumimba de.
Muso meata kaya kanki kyak.
Odd prime number ina. Odd number ime kyop. Odd number ina. Odd prime number ime makyop.
Odd number ina. Odd prime number ime machata.
So. One church.
1, 2, 3. Check for English translation. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. For English translation, 92.3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Odd number ina. Odd brand number ina. Odd number mine chata. Odd brand number mine. Odd number ime mine machata. So. 31 church, odd number Yimata. 31 church, odd number Inde.
Number which is not usable by two images.
Number which is not usable by two na odd number image chata. 31 church, odd brand number Yimata. 31 church, odd brand number Inde.
Odd number Imakashi, brand number image.
Odd number Imakashi, brand number ina. Odd brand number image chata. My bata, odd brand number mina. Odd number image chata. Odd brand number mina. Odd number image chata. So
Zero church.
Zero church, odd number my bata. Zero church, odd number my deck.
Number which is not usable by two images.
Number which is not usable by two maila. Odd number my bay chata. Zero church, odd brand number my bata. Zero church, odd brand number my day.
Odd number my Makashi, brand number image.
Odd number my baka, she brand number my na. Odd brand number my bay chata.
One, two, three. Check for English translation. 92.3. Please check for English translation. Check for English translation. 92.3.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element. Church.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element. Church. Atom kitini Yimata. Element kitini Shukubech.
Tamado. A pure substance which has single type of atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means church.
A pure substance which has single type of atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means church. Element kitini Yimata. Atom da element nila muso mushi yawa tunjoko ni kebashi kubech.
Tamado. Musulima de. Atom ina element imbe kyap, element ina atom imbe magyap. Hydrogen gas church. A pure substance which has single type of atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means in nature.
A pure substance which has single type of atom that
Check
cannot
for
be
English
separated by ordinary chemical
translation.
means
1, 2, 3.
element
Check for English translation. 92.3. Please. 92.3.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element vibration.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element minor. Atom vibrate, chata. Atom mina, element vibrate, chata.
Jesus.
Atom mina, element vibrate, machata.
Copper atom church.
Atom church, atom vimata. Atom church, atom vime.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element in base.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element in a atom image. Copper atom church, element in copper atom church, element image.
A pure substance which has single type of atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means invasion.
A pure substance which has single type of atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means in a element image. Atom minor, element image.
Teacher.
Atom minor, element image.
Again.
Vacuum church.
Vacuum church, atom minor. Vacuum church, atom minor.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element invasion.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element minor. Atom minor. Vacuum church, element minor. Vacuum church, element minor.
A pure substance which has single type of atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means invasion.
A pure substance which has single type of atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means minor. Element minor.
Teacher.
24
karat gold in church.
24 karat gold in church, gold. 24 karat gold in church, gold.
A pure substance which has single type of gold atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means invasion.
A pure substance which has single type of gold atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means in a gold in the kata. 24 karat gold in church, atom. 24 karat gold in church, atom.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element invasion.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element minor. Atom minor kata. Atom in a gold in the kata.
Teacher.
Atom in a gold in the kata.
Zero atom church.
Zero atom church, atom. Zero atom church, atom.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element invasion.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element in a atom in the kata. Zero atom church, gold. Zero atom church, gold.
A pure substance which has single type of gold atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means invasion.
A pure substance which has single type of gold atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means minor. Gold minor kata. Gold in a atom minor kata.
Teacher.
Gold in a atom minor kata.
Gold atom church.
Gold atom church, gold. Gold atom church, gold.
A pure substance which has single type of gold atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means invasion.
A pure substance which has single type of gold atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means in a gold in the kata. Gold atom church, atom. Gold atom church, atom.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element invasion.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element in a atom in the kata. Gold minor, atom in the kata.
Teacher.
Gold minor, atom in the kata.
Water church.
Water church, gold. Water church, gold.
A pure substance which has single type of gold atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means invasion.
A pure substance which has single type of gold atom that cannot be separated by ordinary chemical means minor. Gold minor kata. Water church, atom. Water church, atom.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element invasion.
A unit of matter, the smallest unit of an element having all the properties of that element minor. Atom minor kata.
전도연한테 죽을 때
audience 90s at the end of
Yeah.
Ale, His Holiness is he will give an audience to those who
Yeah, da.
participate in the debate.
근데 그 수주 중에 상관로 카다를 거다. 순두다 카다를. 관계 대신 저와 가와메바 제메바 샤와메바 담메바 와메바 담메바 다데데메 대신메 저반이 저배 상제 만남제 담바달라 상선로 야, 다들이 얘라도 들한테 지난주에 다 주주야
Today,
들한테 주시디 아니 playing with numbers share then the nibadi atom and element
His Holiness is talking about the debates that the students did just now. His Holiness said they debated on the subject of atom as well as other science matters. And these are basically modern subjects like maths and science, etc. These are very important. So in science, maths is very important. So what is being done here is modern subjects like science and maths is being discussed through the by using the Buddhist dialectical debate system, which has this system was developed over centuries from India by great masters like Nagarjuna, etc. This method of debating this system of debating was there in India. It came from Tibet, but it was not there in China. But in the recent past, some people have been trying to introduce this into Chinese, but in English, so far this is not there because something to do with the English language. The language itself doesn't have the right sort of words to use the English language for debating in this particular manner. So we have introduced in this in the TCV and some Tibetan schools. The students have, since few years back, started to use the Buddhist dialectical system of debating to study maths and science, which is very unique. So His Holiness is asking the crowd to raise up those people to raise up their hands who are attending this teaching for the first time. And don't raise your hands if you have attended this teaching earlier. So for those who have attended this teaching at TCB earlier, it's like a repetition, but for those who have not, and this is their first time attending this, I want to say a little bit that we have this Mind Life Science Conference always taking place in and during this scientists from around the world attend this conference, and some of the scientists who attended this Mind Life conference and they mentioned that this Buddhist method of debating on Buddhist philosophy, on logic, is a very useful and powerful means of studying. And then last year we had a meeting in South India, and this Mind and Life Science Conference in South India, in the big monasteries there. And during the break time, some of the scientists went to see the Buddhist monks debating. And there were also some of the senior monks explained the debates, the method of the Buddhist debating to these scientists, and many of the scientists were extremely impressed, and they said this is really unique. And so during the Mind and Life conference, some of the scientists, they also felt very excited and enthusiastic, and while we were having the science discussion during the Mind and Life conference, some of the scientists imitated the monks' way of debating, by raising their hands and clapping when they were in deep discussion on scientific matters. So this is so now this is what is happening is really unique and important. It's not something ordinary. So this method of dealing with studying a subject by using logic and debate and analyzing the matter is an extremely powerful way of studying. So this will greatly help. This ancient method of studying will greatly help in the study of modern subjects to use our intellectual power to the maximum. That's the purpose and benefit of this way of debating through logic. So when we do studies, research, what words we use and the vocabulary or the terms and the method of discussion is extremely important in maximizing the usage of our intellectual power. So So 40 years ago, we initially had this idea of having dialogues with Western scientists. And we had some initial discussions with some people who were Westerners, who have some interest in Buddhist philosophy. So I expressed my desire to them. So at that time, when I said this, expressed my feeling to them, these people were saying, we have to you Buddhists have to be careful, because science is a killer of religion. Science kills religion. Whenever a religion comes into contact with science, science kills them. So you better be careful, be aware of this. But I said, Buddhism is a scientific religion. It is not based on belief only. It is based on logic and reasoning and experimentation. This is the very message of the Buddha himself. He said, and the Nalanda masters of ancient India, they have all used this method of logic and experimentation, research and analysis to study the philosophical subject matters. So if a subject matter has validity, then the more you analyze, the more clearer it becomes, the more it becomes more and more substantiated through analysis and research. Whereas if a subject is just belief-based, has no grounding in logic and no grounding in logic and reasoning, then the more you analyze, the more it becomes vague, and finally it just becomes. So, in the last 30 years, we began an initiative to start having dialogues with Western scientists. So eventually, over the years, the scientists, instead of Buddhism being killed by scientists, the scientists became more and more, showing more and more interest in Buddhism. And became more and more interested in Buddhist topics and Buddhist philosophy. For example, in science we have quantum physics, which has some kind of a similarity in Buddhism. So in science, when Western physicists analyze objects, they found out that in the end they cannot point to anything. It becomes empty. Now this is exactly there in Buddhist philosophy. According to the Madhyamika school of philosophy, all objects, if analyzed, becomes empty. They are unfindable. But at the same time, it doesn't mean the object doesn't exist. The object does exist, but cannot be found when analyzed. So this is the same finding of the quantum physics. So in the last 30 years, scientists became more and more becoming ever more interested in studying, engaging in dialogues with Buddhist experts, and Buddhist philosophers and experts also benefit a lot from these dialogues, because there are many things science can offer Buddhism that Buddhism has in earlier times not paid attention to. Now, for example, the monks in South India, where the big monasteries are there, the monks don't know English. They don't study maths or science. But then, when they engage in dialogues with Western scientists, the scientists were saying they found out that somehow the monks, the monk students there, have a very powerful way of powerful grasp of the subject matter when they talk, when they have exchanges. So from our Buddhist side also, So from our Buddhist side also, initially some of the senior monks have apprehensions about engaging in dialogues with Western scientists. But they think science is a secular field of education, nothing to do with religion, and it's sort of a waste of time to deal with Western scientists. But now, over the years, even our senior Buddhist monks realize that science and Buddhism go in parallel, and they will be benefit to both sides. And so since few years back, we have the big monasteries in South India have officially started science programs, and some of the senior students are actually taking studying science and are so in Buddhism, for example, we have 4 schools of philosophy. So there are a lot of debates between these 4 schools of philosophy, and the way these 4 schools discuss, have debate with each other is very, very profound. So in the same way, we have to, from the Buddhist side, we have to pay attention to science, because in today's world, science is the most important field of subject study to know about the reality of the world. So that's why I said that I always emphasize that, tell people, if we want to be a good 21st century Buddhist, we must try to pay attention to modern science, on top of having a good grounding on our Buddhist tradition, on our own Buddhist tradition. So if we have that, then we can be a good modern Buddhist, which I call 21st century Buddhist. So in ancient times, in Nalanda University, at that time, in Nalanda, the students and masters there study not only Buddhism, they study all the various kinds of knowledges available in India at that time, like poetries, grammar, and Buddhism, Hinduism, everything. So we have So now the Tibetan Buddhism is it's a direct it's a Buddhism that came to Tibet directly from the Nalanda tradition. So even though Tibet underwent great destruction in the last over 50 years, we have been able to re-establish our tradition in India, and we are trying to preserve it. And now we have to go further and become modernize our tradition by incorporating science into our Buddhist studies. So we have to think about, we have to find out like how to improve this level of the standard of education in our schools. We have to find out where we are lacking and where we are in good state, good standing. So, so we, on top of preserving our culture, we have to now add science and modern studies. And this has been our plan, education plan, ever since we came into exile. Our education department have been sort of following this line of policy. And then of late, we have also been emphasizing on how to bring out, sort of bring out more professional students, in the sense that those who are specializing in specialized field, and especially also, and also like those like even in Buddhist Tibetan schools, how to sort of try to introduce a sort of a specialized line of study on Buddhist philosophy. And so in my case, I started studying Buddhist philosophy from age 11. I was not a very enthusiastic student at that time. So and then I gave my geisha examination in 1959. Actually, it was not yet time to give my geisha exam at that time, but my Lord Chamberlain at that time said that it is extremely important that I should prepone, fast track my geisha examination because of this situation in Tibet at that time. So before that, I was kind of sort of a slightly slow student, in the sense that I was not a very hardworking student. But as soon as the time was set for my geisha exam, then I became extremely hardworking because I have to give exam. And so at that time I have several debating partners who helped me learn debating. And there was one debating partner whose name is Deyang Senshep. I sometimes, when I debate with him, I sometimes, sort of lie a little bit, and sometimes use my logic, and I can sometimes defeat him. But Yengudu Tsonyi, another teacher, and he told me that you are very intelligent, and if you have enough time to study the 5 fields of Buddhist sciences, you would become an excellent geisha. So anyway, altogether I didn't have that much good time to study due to the situation at that time. And but anyhow, I have passed my geshe examination. And today, so in Tibet, the geshe examination was given in the Zulakang. On top of that spot where I sit, there's a white umbrella hanging in the air, and I sat down there and gave my geshe examination. That's why sometimes I say I gave my geshe examination under the white umbrella, which is sort of a way of boasting yourself, because that's sort of a privilege to give geshe examination under the white umbrella. So so therefore maybe we should try to sort of make some examinations for those students in the schools for studying on the subject of Buddhist logic and debate, because then students might take more interest and study it harder. Because that's the main purpose of setting up separate Tibetan schools in India, is because it's with the hope that Tibetans would be able to separate their culture, their unique culture, which we brought from Tibet, in addition to studying modern fields. So students, I'm telling His Holiness is telling the students to study well. It is possible that in the future you may become professionals and become professors and become teachers in universities in India. So the Indian government has been extremely kind to us, and so we have to prove ourselves to be like hardworking people and repay back the kindness of India by preserving our culture well, because that was the So my main point is that how to now nurture this study of Buddhist philosophy in the schools that we have started. Earlier, many years back, we did initially, long time ago, start a program like this in the schools. Then over the years, it just declined and then stopped. Now we have restarted it, and we should try to preserve it well. So when I say we have to be 21st century Buddhist, we are all like 99% of the Tibetan people are Buddhist, but it's not enough to be just Buddhist, because what we have to do is we have to be like really good people, knowledgeable and learned people. That is the meaning of being a 21st century Buddhist. Our teacher is Buddha Shakyamuni, and so our teacher is knowledgeable, good person, and a learned person. So just like our teacher, we followers of Buddhism, we have to be also we also should try to be like him and follow in the footstep of his path, in his footstep. In Tibet, Buddhism was brought by Shandarakshita in the 8th century, assisted by and also Padmasambhava. And but Shandarakshita was, for example, the person who inspired this program of translating in Sanskrit literature into Tibetan. And then followed after his passing away, Kamalashila, who was Shandarakshita's disciple in Nalanda, came to Tibet and continued the work begun by Shandarakshita. Usually we say Kenlop Chosome, means the abbot, the guru, and the king, which means Shandarakshita, Guru Padmasambhava, and King Tisongdevze. So in Tibet, there was one Nyingma monastery called Minduling. It's a great monastic center from where many great scholars, Nyingma scholars, have emerged over the years. And during the time of the 5th Dalai Lama, Lojin Damashiri, who was a contemporary of the 5th Dalai Lama, Lojin Damashiri has written praise to these three persons. In that praise, he first praised Shandarakshita, second Guru Padmasambhava, and Sumba, and third the king. So according to this way of praising the three persons, when we put up the statues on the shrine, Shandarakshita should be in the center, and the Padmasambhava and the king should be on the sides. But usually we keep Guru Rinpoche, Guru Padmasambhava in the center. So once I asked this question to a Nyingma master, why Guru Rinpoche is always put in the center, and this master said that this is because according to the treasure lineage, hidden treasure lineage, which came from Guru Rinpoche, that then the guru should be in the center. But according to general Buddhist legacy, then Shandarakshita should be in the center. For example, because Shandarakshita's legacy is so big in Tibet. For example, let's just think of the treatises he has written. He was a great logician from Nalanda, and he has written these. He has written important text on pramana, logic, and epistemology. So Shandarakshita was not only a monk, but he was also a tantric practitioner. And regarding the Tantra in Tibet, it was the secret path was mainly Guru Rinpoche took the main responsibility of introducing this lineage into Tibet. But the general Buddhism in Tibet was like established in Tibet by Shandarakshita. So we are followers of Shandarakshita. So Chandrarakshita was overall sort of a master who practices both the Yogacara school of Buddhist philosophy as well as Madhyamika school of philosophy. But for example, but generally he is considered as an Sautantrika Madhyamika school master, which follows the Buddhist philosophy of Asanga. And it is so therefore now what my main point is we have to study well, we have to study our their Buddhist legacy and preserve well. It is such a great tradition. So next I want to say that I first went to Europe in 1970 something, 78 or something. I didn't remember. So I first went to Europe in 1973. One of the first thing that I proposed was the concept of universal responsibility in the West, because one of the main problems in our world society is people are sectarian, biased, and so on, and most of the problems arise out of that. Later on, I went to, in the 78 or something, I went to America, and then following that I have been back to America and Europe over and over again many times. There are many religious traditions in the West, like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, etc. All these religious traditions are all great traditions. They are benefiting many millions of people, which is excellent. At the same time, there are people who are sort of sectarian, in the sense that they are over attached to one's own tradition, and then sort of treat others as other traditions as one's rival. So that is the source of trouble on this in this world. That's why I felt that there's a need for a sense of universal responsibility. There are about 7 billion people in this world, and even though we are having less and less world wars, but most of the problems are all man-made, and all people we are all human beings. All want happiness. All don't want unhappiness. For example, if we have a wound on our body, we feel discomfort and we feel sick and we don't like that. So that's same for all everybody. So and similarly, everybody loves their life, just like I love my life. Everyone else loves his or her life. So, but the point is, But how does problem begin? It begins by our way of thinking, me and others. Feeling attached to sort of cherishing yourself, and then trying to destroy others in order to protect one's own religion. One destroy the other religious tradition of other groups of people, or kill other people. So therefore, most of the problems in this world, in our global society, are man-made. Out of the 70, I'm sorry, I think he's only said 70 billion people, 10 billion people are non-religious. They don't have any beliefs. So now, in a situation like this, in India, since thousands of years, what we have a tradition of secular ethics, which is so very, very important and essential for today's time. So, for example, in India, Charvaks, there's a religious tradition called Charvak. They are against, they deny the existence of future lives and past lives. They are materialist in their philosophical position. But even Charvak philosophers in India, since at ancient times, are called rishis in ancient scriptures. This was told to me by Advani ji, the Indian politician. So this was a tradition that was prevailing in India since thousands of years. For example, the modern Indian constitution is also based on this very concept of secular ethics, which means that whether a person is religious or non-religious, as long as you are a person, you have to be a good person and live in harmony with your society, your friends, and the environment. That's the concept of being secular ethics. So on the other hand, if you call yourself as a religious person, you have a belief system, but in your heart, if you always think of bad things, then there's no way you will ever experience happiness and calm and harmonious. This applies to your home with your family members. So we are not talking about future lives. We are just talking about this life. So if we have no secular ethics, forget future lives. Even in this life, there's no chance of experiencing a happy life. Look at even social animals. We are all social animals. So biologically, we have from the very beginning we were born, we are dependent on the mother's love, and so we need love, and which is nothing to do with religion. Scientists are all saying that when a mother conceives a baby, if the mother is in a calm state of mind, the baby's growth and development in the mother's womb is more smooth and better, and the baby's brain develops in a more better way. The enlargement of the brain. For example, and similarly, after the baby was born, the way the mother shows love to the baby by touching, putting it, keeping the baby on her body, touching her body. This touch, experience of touch, mother's skin touching the baby's body, is considered extremely essential for the proper development of the baby's brain. In Tibetan nomads, wearing animal skin clothes, keep their babies in that way. In the nomadic regions, they put the small baby on their body, covered by their animal skin, sheepskin chupa, the cloak they wear. So, which is very good. Whereas in the cities, the Tibetan aristocrats, they let their in India, we had a meeting with Karan Singh, and there was one Christian person also. So Karan Singh was my sitting next to me. So I just played with him, and I told him I was born as a farmer's child, whereas you were born as a prince of Kashmir. But probably I have drunk more mother's milk and touched my mother's body skin than you, because you being a son of born to the queen and the king of Kashmir. Maybe you were looked after more by your parents' servants. So I just joked to him like that. So this is actually what scientists say. How human life begins. It begins in the mother's womb, and through the mother nurturing the baby. For example, some of the senior staffs in the school knows my sister, my late sister. When I was born, it was said that my sister told me that she was the one who first lifted me up, and she noticed that one of my eyes was open and the other one was still closed. So my sister put her thumb there and forced it to open. So my sister was holding me in her hand. At that time, in our village, there's a tradition that there's a tree which is called a shingar, a sweet tree. They have a tradition to boil that soup, tree's bark, and make it into soup and feed the baby with this soup. It is said that this soup will make the baby strong. And she fed me with that soup, and she said that I was very hungry, and I drank a lot. I drank it, and immediately I had running stomach. I let out diarrhea. So people call me, I am the Avalokiteshvara. So, as soon as Avalokiteshvara was born, he had running stomach. So this mother's love and touch to the baby is extremely strong, and the impact of that lasts for the whole entire life of the baby. So loving environment and loving atmosphere is extremely important for the growth of the baby, and that impact continues until the very end of the child's life, throughout his adult life. Whereas if the baby grew up under an atmosphere of fear and fear and lack of love, then the same thing, the impact lasts for the rest of the life of the baby. So love is an essential element, sort of almost like a biological element for human life, and that it is such an important element for happiness and peace in our life. That's why all religions adopt that and try to preach that and try to emphasize on the cultivation of love. But love itself is a secular itself is not a sort of something taught as a dogma by a religion, but it is a intrinsic, inherent quality of our human life. It is a secular, that's why I call it secular ethics. So similarly, love has so many consequences. If we practice love, if we love ourselves and we can give love to others, when we have a strong sense of loving kindness, then we feel less we have less of other negative emotions like anger, hatred, jealousy, like that. Whereas if we lack in love, then all these other negative emotions grow uncontrollably. So therefore, this is a natural phenomenon. If when loving kindness is there, the 10 negative actions, the 10 negative thoughts automatically subside. Whereas if you lack in love and kindness, then the 10 negative actions and the 10 negative thoughts just by nature automatically becomes rampant. So for example, me as a member of the human family, I have the responsibility to practice love and compassion as my responsibility as a member of the human family. This is because we know the benefit of such a mind for oneself as well as for the human society. So now I want you also, out of the out of the 7 billion people, you are also members of this 7 billion human family. So each one of you should have a responsibility to make this human family of 7 billion people a more harmonious, peaceful, loving and caring society. So in order to do that, we have to practice loving kindness. And if we have that, then we will automatically have more respect and concern for the environment and we are living in. For example, when a mother dog has a baby puppies, the mother immediately licks her the babies, the puppies, and shows her love. So love is a intrinsic, inherent human quality which we should not ignore, but rather try to strengthen it. So we should show love to any human being, regardless of caste, creed, race. It doesn't matter who that other person is. We must try to show love and show loving kindness to everybody. And the second point is me as a Buddhist monk, Buddhist bhikshu, and a religious practitioner, a spiritual practitioner. So on the basis of that, I try to promote religious harmony between all different religious traditions. I have a lot of friends among Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, and in Hinduism. So when I meet my friends from other religious traditions, I just always meet them with sincerity, with respect and with concern. And then the other people also, the spiritual practitioners from other traditions also reciprocate my gesture similarly, because I showed love to them. In the philosophical tenets of the different religious schools, it is true that there are variations, there are differences. Some believe in a creator, some doesn't believe in creator, some believe in a general. So in this way, there are many differences in the tenets. But the very purpose why there are, different tenets is to teach human beings how to try to strengthen love. So the main purpose is same. So therefore, because the ultimate goal is the same, to help human beings to promote love and compassion. So all religions are worthy of respect and are useful spiritual traditions for the human society. So how to promote religious tradition? We can promote religious harmony by showing genuine respect and concern and for each other. Otherwise, there's no way of promoting religious harmony. So, most of the people here are practitioners of the Buddha's teaching. So because main teaching of Buddhism is love and compassion. So because of this reason, you should have respect for all other religious traditions who teach love and compassion, like Christianity, Hinduism, Judaism, whatever, because the fundamental message is the same. But this doesn't mean that if another religious tradition abuse another religious tradition, then then of course one has to protect one's religious tradition. So, but before doing that, we have to have a good knowledge of one's religious tradition very well, like a profound understanding of the essential teachings of that religion. So this applies to all followers of all religious traditions. For example, if somebody asks you what religion you are following, you say Buddhism, and then what is Buddhism? And you may say three jewels, and then if you are asked what is the three jewels, then you say I don't know. So that's not the right thing to do. Once I went to beyond Manali and Karsha and Lahore Spiti area. So then I told them people there, because I know many of the people there, and I told them, you are all Buddhists. What is the Buddhist teaching? And they said, Buddham, Dharamsala, like that. Then I asked them, what is Buddha and Dharma? And they said they don't know. Then I asked them, is Lord Buddha and Brahma are same or different? And they said they are same. So this is a big misinformation. So we shouldn't do like that.
So as a human being, you should think of helping the humanity, and as a practitioner of religion, you should try to think of bring harmony amongst the religious traditions. So those of you who go to schools with other people from other countries and so forth, of course, if you could see, if the other people could see the Tibetan, the good characters of Tibetans, where you go to school, then it would be really help to have more friends for Tibetans, and the more friends you have, by gaining more friends from others, because of their respect for our culture and legend and basic good qualities, then it would be really good. And so think of taking responsibility for universal responsibility, secular ethics, promotion of secular ethics and human values, as well as religious harmony. So please keep that in mind. And now, in order for these things to happen, Now we have the literatures that were written by the great Nalanda masters. We're towards the end of the Heart Sutra, where it said that the Buddhas of the three times became fully enlightened based or relying on the perfection of wisdom. And then next comes the mantra of Heart Sutra. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering. And so this mother, the perfection of wisdom, which refers to the understanding or the penetrative insight, direct insight into emptiness, which is the most powerful antidote to overcome all our defilements. And it says should be known as truth, since it is not false. So this direct insight into emptiness is also called ultimate bodhicitta. With the help of bodhicitta, the conventional bodhicitta, what this actually finds, this wisdom finds, is that the things, the ultimate nature of things, when we do the analysis into the nature of things, and so this has the power to overcome our delusions, defilements. And so emptiness is something which is an object that can be found by this wisdom analyzing the ultimate reality of things. Whereas when we leave things on the conventional level, that is called conventional existence. And so there are two truths, conventional and ultimate truth. And then regarding the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, it is declared as the Atha Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Swaha. And so the meaning of this mantra is, according to certain commentaries, that Yatha means it is like this. And Gate, the two Gates, refer to, for example, we have the term Tathagata, thus gone. And so Gate refers to go. To go. And you can also, when you use it as imperative term, we could say go. And Paragate means go beyond. Para here refers to beyond. And then Parasamgate means go perfectly beyond. And Bodhi Swaha means to lay the foundation of the enlightenment. Bodhi meaning enlightenment. And so what this means is that by familiarizing with the understanding of emptiness over and over again, with the help of accumulation of merit, we are here talking from the point of view of the Mahayana path. So, with the help of accumulation of merit or sambhara, and after having generated this aspiration or determination to become enlightened a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, then when you realize emptiness, for those of the bodhisattva, those with bodhisattva potential for bodhisattva path, who are of the more sharper faculty, what they do is they first, before generating bodhicitta, they actually cultivate this insight into emptiness. And because of that, when you understand emptiness, the view of emptiness well, then you will know how ignorance, you can actually identify what ignorance is, and you can see that ignorance is a distorted view of reality. And therefore, you can see that since it is distorted view, you can actually have there's always an antidote to it, And so, if something has an antidote to it, and then what it actually encounters can be reduced and diminished, and then finally overcome. And therefore, when we talk about suffering, we are mainly referring to the conditioned, pervasive existential suffering. And so when you actually diminish the cause of the suffering, then the suffering also will be reduced. And so the ignorance, actually what it actually affects is our own mind. And the mind is what is affected by this ignorance. And therefore, when you develop this insight into emptiness, then the basic mind is actually developed into wisdom, and the ignorance is eliminated from our mind stream. So if there is no basic mind which is neutral, which is at this point in our case, which is defiled by ignorance, then we cannot actually develop a path. For example, if you have a basic fabric, a white fabric, then you can actually color it with any other colors. Whereas if you have a black fabric, then it's difficult to color it, dye it with other colors. And therefore, if the basic mind were to be defiled in its natural intrinsic nature, then we cannot actually overcome the defilements. But that is not the case. We can actually see from our own experience on a daily basis. You can at some point in the day become angry, and then at other times you can have desire, greed, and so forth, or you can have compassion and love. And so anger and love cannot go together at the same time, simultaneously. So, for example, even if you may be a single person, in the morning you may be angry in the morning, but in the afternoon or in the evening you may be overcome with attachment. And so you are the same person, the same continuity of the mind, can have two different aspects or experiences in the morning and evening. And therefore, if there were no neutral state of mind within those experiences, then you cannot have those changes in the mind as well. And so these negative emotions like anger, attachment, and so forth do not have any they are not in the intrinsic nature of the mind itself. So this basic mind, which is affected or influenced by these negative emotions, if you are able to develop faith and other positive factors, then these do not have these positive factors that you develop do not have to rely or depend on our ignorance, whereas our anger and other negative emotions mainly develop because of ignorance, and so they're dependent on ignorance. And therefore, in the 400 verses, Aryadeva says, just as the physical faculty permeates all the other sense faculties, and therefore, likewise, the ignorance permeates all other negative emotions. And therefore, when you overcome ignorance, then you can actually eliminate all the other negative emotions, anger, and so forth. And so, how do you overcome this ignorance? And then it is also answered by Aryadeva in his 400 verses. He says, when you see the dependent nature of things, then this ignorance will be eliminated. And therefore, he says, when you overcome all the ignorance, then all the rest of the negative emotions, the afflictive emotions, will be overcome. And so, this is really a powerful statement. We should not just leave it at in words, as it is said in that, saying that, oh, this is said in the text. But you should actually check within yourself. When you are attached to somebody, what kind of experience you have, and when you are angry at somebody, or what happens to you, how do the person or the thing that you are angry at look like to you. It looks like as if the person or the thing is absolutely negative. But when you actually see that that is not the case, then this anger, this intensity of the anger will diminish. So if you check within yourself, you can see whether this is true or not. So we should actually contemplate and reflect on this. And so one scientist, American scientist I know, who is a psychiatrist, many years ago, some years ago, I met him. At that time, he was 84 years old, and I heard that he's still alive in his 90s. And if I get the opportunity, I wish to meet him again. His name is Aaron Beck. And so he gave me a book that he wrote. And he said, the title of the book says Prisoners of Hate. And so he's told me that when we become angry at somebody, then the person or the object absolutely looks negative. For example, when you fight with somebody else, some other children, don't you see the other person to be really totally negative? But the next day, when he or she comes to you and gives some gifts, you'll find him or her a good person, don't you? And so, yes, the other day, when you fought with the person, quarreled with the person, then you would think that, oh, I will never talk with this person at all. But when you receive some gift from that very person, then you will actually smile and think that you will be friends with them. And so, when you are angry and you see the person to be negative, totally negative, so Aaron Beck told me that the person looks very negative, absolutely negative, but then the 90% of that negativeness is actually our own mental projection. So this is exact. In Nagarjuna's Mulamadhyamaka Karika, he says, exhaustion of karma and delusions is liberation, and karma and delusion comes from mental constructions, and these in turn come from clinging to some kind of true existence and things. In other words, reification of things having some true existence, independent existence. And therefore, this scientist Aaron Beck said 90% of our negativeness is our own mental projection. And similarly, it is the case with our attachment. And so 90% of the beauty that we see in the object that we become attached to is also our own mental projection. So those of you who have come of age, when you meet with your boy or a girl, a boy seeing a girl seeing a boy, when you are attached to them, then those of you who are married, of course, you have found your partner to be really beautiful, attractive, and so forth. But after marriage, when 1 year passes by, 2 years passes by, and then a child is born, and then you will start to see the person to be ugly. And then you may even think that you have actually made the mistake to have married this person. And then you will think about divorce. And you will say you want to divorce from this partner. So when you are overcome with attachment to that person, the person absolutely looks attractive and beautiful. But because when you see that a part of your mind is actually exaggerating that beauty, then your attachment will also reduce. And then in the beginning you may have seen the person to be absolutely beautiful, but your perception changes, and then you again see the person to be absolutely unattractive and so forth, and then you're thinking about divorce. And so because of this exaggeration in the beauty or the ugliness of the person, you actually become attached or angry at the person. And this is because of the reification due to our seeing some kind of absolute existence, true existence in the odd thing, in the odd person. And therefore, what actually causes us all these ruins is all these negative emotions are mostly, many of them are called dependent, or they are dependent on our ignorance, and then some of these attachment and anger are also go together with the ignorance as well. So these are the latter ones are more subtler forms of negative emotions, whereas certain other negative emotions, like which arise through holding on to some kind of substantially self-sufficiently existent person, and which of course this kind of distorted view arise from this view where you see the things having some totally true and absolute existence. So Chandrakirti, in his commentary to the Madhyamaka Karika, the Prasanapada commentary, says this very clearly. They're making this distinction between the negative emotions which arise through, which are given rise to by the true clinging to true existence, and then certain other negative emotions which actually are given rise to, but they also go together with these ignorance, holding on to some true existence and things. And then when you actually understand that this ignorance actually does not have any valid basis or support from valid knowledge, and then when you see that it is totally distorted view, a totally illusion, then you will also be able to see how you can actually overcome it, how you want to overcome it, and see the possibility of liberation and also omniscient state of Buddhahood, which are possible for you to attain. And then that will in turn help you to see the possibility of others to become enlightened as well, and therefore you would want to determine to help others, and therefore compassion and bodhicitta also arises on the basis of understanding this true nature of things. So in our classical text, there are two different types of disciples. One of dull faculty and others of sharp faculty. So the later ones are said to actually go through the process of analyzing the teachings, what purpose it is, with what kind of reason it is written, what is the purpose of this text, what is the subject matter, and then what is the ultimate goal and temporary goal, and then what are the different connection between the subject matter, the temporary goal and the ultimate goal, and so forth, and do this kind of analysis into the nature of things. And so this mantra of Heart Sutra, Gate, the first Gate refers to the path of accumulation, and then the second Gate refers to the path of application or preparation, which is to say that you have the understanding of emptiness which arise through cultivation, through meditation. So meditatively arisen penetrative insight into emptiness, and where you have the single-pointed concentration and insight combined. And then Paragati refers to the path of seeing, where you see, where you actually have the true direct perception or understanding or insight into emptiness. When you reach that, then you have become an Arya being. And then the Parasamgati refers to the path of meditation, following the path of seeing, where for Mahayana practitioner, you reach the first Bodhisattva ground, and then from this second Bodhisattva ground onwards, you are on the path of meditation, and then that culminates into Bodhi, or the enlightenment of Buddhas, omniscient one. And so this Swaha, Bodhi Swaha, means lay the foundation of the Bodhi, or enlightenment. So you know whether reciting this mantra can eliminate any obstacles, but when you actually recite this mantra, what you have to get sense from this is that you actually need to journey along the path to that goal of enlightenment, omniscient state of Buddhahood. And so from this time, you should start the path, and so right at the beginning of the path, so we need to journey along the path, and then this the Prajnaparamita, also arising in the form of a deity, is the Bhagavati Prajnaparamita, the mother lady, perfection of wisdom. And so what these mantras show is how we actually journey along the path to enlightenment. And so this shows the progression along the path, and the text itself also teaches us the explicit meaning, or the subject matter is emptiness. So Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration, commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva. I looked at you, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. And so His Holiness read to the end of the text, and together with the colophon, giving the translator, and next, we are going to go through the other text. So in this booklet that has been distributed, there is also the commentary to the Heart Sutra by Tendar Harampa, a Mongolian Geshe. Next, turn to the praise to Manjushri on page 66. In English text on page 66, the Tibetan is on page 64 and 5, English on 66, 67. So the praise to Manjushri. Homage to my Guru and Protector Manjushri, you whose intelligence shines forth as the sun, unclouded by delusions and traces of ignorance, who holds to your heart a scriptural text symbolic of seeing all things as they are. So these shows the wisdom side of the Manjushri. So within the wisdom, there is a wisdom which sees things as they are, the reality, the final reality of things, which refers to emptiness. And then also there is the wisdom aspect, which is the aspect of seeing everything, the multitude of things, the multiplicity of things. And so there are these two wisdoms which are of same taste, of one taste. So from the point of view of emptiness, you can say everything is of one taste, and from the point of view of the conventionality of things, then the diversity of things actually come into one. And so the first the passage, you here is a general term, a generic term referring to something, and whose intelligence refers to understanding of emptiness or the wisdom of emptiness, which shines forth as the sun, and the two defilements are the cloud is like a metaphor for the two defilements, two types of defilements, and so delusions or afflictive emotions, and the what is known as cognitive obscuration, which is the obscuration to omniscience. And then who holds to your heart a scriptural text symbolic of seeing all things as they are, which refers to the multiplicity of things. So while being absorbed in emptiness, the Buddhas are able to see all things very clearly without any kind of obscuration. And therefore, you hold this text symbolizing seeing all things. So, within one instance of your knowledge, you see everything that exists while being absorbed, while your mind is absorbed in emptiness. So, because of these two knowledges, then the Buddha is able to, the Manjushri is able to help other sentient beings according to their mental dispositions, inclinations, interests, and so forth. So, who teaches in 60 ways with the loving compassion of a mother for her only son or child. So, having overcome all the affective emotions together with their traces, and because of that, they are able to have compassion to all other beings who are overcome by ignorance and afflictive emotions. And so Master Shantideva says, although they want happiness, they want to overcome suffering, they actually run after suffering. But although they wish to have happiness, the ignorant destroy their happiness as if they are their enemies. So because of our ignorance about the causes which bring about happiness and which bring about suffering, we actually bring about suffering to ourselves. And therefore, those who have this kind of full knowledge of everything and while being absorbed in emptiness feel greatly compassionate towards us sentient beings. So to all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. So suffering here is not just the painful experiences, the obvious painful experiences that we know as unwanted, but here it actually has to be understood in terms of the samsaric conditioned existence, the pervasive samsaric conditioned existence, which is made clear by Benchen Lobsang Chögyен, who says that the suffering of suffering is something which even the animals are aware of being suffering on pain and unwanted, and therefore they have the wish to be free from this. So they want to be free from this. So this suffering is like our headache. For example, when we have headache, we feel uncomfortable. So we see animals being used as beasts of burden by people, and although they feel tired, the masters actually put the loads on them, and then actually hit them with sticks and so forth, and so they just follow the order of the master. It's quite a sad thing to see animals being used as such. And then when they become old, then they are not taken care of by the masters. So in Tibet we have the animal called zo, and which is also used as beast of burden. So when you see the reality of things, how they are, that they do not have any independent existence, but people actually create the causes of suffering because of not knowing the reality, and therefore you should feel compassionate. You would feel compassionate towards them. And so those with such compassion, how do they actually help and benefit these beings, sentient beings? The Buddha says that Buddhas do not wash away the sins of sentient beings, nor do they take away the suffering of them, like picking out the thorn, and nor do they actually shift their own realization within the sentient beings, but by showing the reality, they help beings to become liberated. And therefore, the words of the Buddha are the ones, the means by which they are able to help sentient beings. And so, you whose dragon thunder-like proclamation of Dharma arouses us from the stupor of our delusions and frees us from the iron chains of our karma. And so these lines show the wisdom, the compassion, and the power of Manjushri. And therefore, he says, he who wields the sword of wisdom, hewing down suffering wherever its sprout appears, so clearing away the darkness of all ignorance. So as I referred to here, as I said, here what is actually praised are the compassion, the wisdom, and the power of Manjushri. So the mind of Manjushri, if you look at the very nature of it, of course it is free from all delusions and not being in its intrinsic nature. And so it is free from the beginning. So it says in the text, who has been pure from the beginning. That refers to the nature of the mind, being not intrinsically affected by or influenced by the delusions and defilements. And it says, you whose princely body is adorned with 112 marks of a Buddha, who has completed the stages, achieving the highest perfections of a bodhisattva. And so because Manjushri has overcome all the defilements within his mind stream and has reached the highest attainment, omniscient state, and therefore he is able to arise while not wavering from this Dharmakaya, arise into the different physical dimensions, physical manifestations. So this is what is referred by this line where it says, whose princely body is adorned with 112 marks of a Buddha. So, for example, when a Buddha arises or comes in the form of the highest or the supreme emanation body, supreme Nirmanakaya body, then there comes together with him the entourage of bodhisattvas like the Maitreya, Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, and so forth, and so who has the complete stages of achieving the highest perfection of a bodhisattva. And so the body of a Buddha, Manjushri here, being a completely enlightened being, has these marks of the major and 32 major and 80 minor are marks of a great being. And to you, O Manjushri, I bow. Let us recite this mantra. Please repeat or with the brilliance of your wisdom, O compassionate one. Please repeat. Omarapazanadi. Omarapazanadi. Let us recite Omarapazanadi 21 times together. Omarapazanadi, 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 Omarapazanadi. So we have Thangka painting of Manjushri up there on the wall. So just imagine Manjushri on my crown, and in his right hand he holds a wisdom sword. And imagine that this wisdom sword is actually touching your heart while Manjushri is holding it. And as you recite the Arapazanadi mantra, imagine rays of light, beams of light flowing from the Manjushri's sword into your heart, and thereby blessing you to increase your wisdom and understanding. Om Arapazanadi, 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 Om Arapazanadi. Marapazanadi, 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 Marapazanadi. So this is for attaining wisdom, wisdom of vastness, understanding of vast wisdom. Then there's also extensive, deep, profound, clear and swift wisdom. Sometimes people are very good at memorizing, but not having much understanding or grasping, and some are good at grasping but not memorizing text. And so there are different aspects of wisdom or intelligence that we have. And so you should imagine that you have received blessings for all different kinds of wisdom and intelligence. And imagine that the wisdom sword that is touching your heart, a replica of it, actually comes forth and dissolves into you. And then imagine that inside your throat, a D syllable in your throat slanting, and imagine an orange D syllable. So let's say this D mantra, repeat this mantra or syllable 108 times, and as you repeat it, imagine drops or butter dripping down at your heart, where there is also another D standing at your heart. So take in a breath and recite Om Arapazanadi. Please repeat this, the last stanza. With the brilliance of your wisdom or compassion, want to illuminate the darkness when closing my mind and enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so that I may gain insight into the Buddha's words and the texts that explain that. May I gain the understanding gained through hearing, reflection, and meditation. And may you bless me to become like you. Allez, qui m'est qui j'ai le second mal aussi. His Holiness is just going to read through the remainder of the remaining part of the text that he taught last year, which is the opening of Eye of Wisdom. So we have come to the part where it deals touching on the wisdom side, the training of wisdom. So with regard to understanding emptiness or selflessness, there is understanding which is in the mode of seeing emptiness in the mode of generic image, and then direct perception of emptiness. So with regard to the understanding or the interpretation of selflessness, there are different philosophical schools, but the highest one is that of the Prasangika Madhyamaka tradition interpretation or understanding of selflessness. So to go through it according to the Prasangika Madhyamaka system, so within the Madhyamaka, generally there are two sub-schools. One school accepts, even in conventional terms, the objective existence in convention, and then the other sub-school says it does not assert this objective existence in convention. And so we can also call them as Madhyamakas, who accepts things to have inherent existence, and those which do not assert that. And so all the misfortunes in samsara, the suffering and so forth, are because of holding on to some true existence in things. And this ignorance is overcome by understanding or insight into selflessness, because the understanding of selflessness goes diametrically against this ignorance. So, of course, with regard to the practice of Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna, they are common even with the non-Buddhist traditions. And therefore, when I say that, in psychology, in ancient Indian psychology, is very vast because of the practice of Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna. And then, with regards to the wisdom or prajna, we have a special wisdom according to Buddhism, which is this understanding, which arises through the understanding of selflessness. So, with regard to selflessness, there is the selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena. So even with regard to the grosser level of selflessness, and these we can make the distinction between these two on the basis of the object onto which we establish the two selflessnesses. Selflessness, which is established on the basis on persons, is the selflessness of persons, and selflessness, which is established on the basis of other objects, is the selflessness of phenomena. And so Madhyamaka Alamkara by Chandarakshita says that things do not exist either as one or many, because they are inherently one as many, because they do not have any inherent existence, because they are not inherently existent either as one or many. So this is one reasoning proving that lack of one and many. And so in general we can say that within the objects of knowledge there are those which can be understood by negation and others which can be established by positive terms. And so within those negations we can have those of the affirming negative and non-affirming negative. And so selflessness comes under the category of non-affirming negative. Because when we say selflessness, what we are rejecting is a selfhood or some kind of self-identity and things, and that is what we reject. And therefore, by rejecting it, we say things do not have any selfhood. So here, when we establish selflessness, we need first to establish the self that we are rejecting, which is the object that is negated. So when you look at yourself and try to think how this I appears, it appears as if it has some kind of an independent existence apart from the body and the mind. But if you really do look at closely, you will see that this way of existence of yourself is not actually true. And therefore you'll see that what this ignorance holds on to is what you are trying to negate or reject, and when you establish selflessness of yourself. And then when you use this reasoning of lack of one and many, you should also establish the reason itself, saying that things do not exist as inherently as one, and then also things do not exist inherently as many or multiple. And then you combine these two together and use them as a combined reasoning to prove the selflessness or the lack of inherent existence of yourself. So by using this kind of reasoning to prove that things do not have any independent or inherent existence, what you come to conclusion in your insight is that at some point you find because things do not have any inherent existence as one or many, therefore they do not exist as inherently, and that insight actually gives you some kind of a sense of vacuity. But then, from your experience, you will see that things do have some kind of existence, and therefore you will be able to see that they are merely designated. So, His Holiness is saying that what we learn from some teacher, then you gain some understanding through hearing the subject, and then you will do some reflection on them, and then through this kind of analysis, reflection, you will come to a conclusion that this is it. And then once you become certain about what you are actually trying to get at, and you find it, then you should focus your mind on it. And then so you are doing focusing meditation. For example, this can be done in the case of compassion or love. And with regard to this focusing meditation and analytical meditation, when you focus your mind single-pointed on an object, with, for example, the faculty of calm abiding, then that is a single-pointed concentration, focusing meditation. Whereas when you do some analysis and examination of how things are, that is analytical meditation. Someone who has developed the pliancy of physical pliancy as well as the mental pliancy, then you and develop from there the bliss of these two pliancies, then the person will then develop the single-pointed concentration or shamatha. So, having this established emptiness, then when you go along the path to enlightenment or nirvana, of course, within the path to nirvana, there are the paths of Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and the Bodhisattva path. And each path is fivefold, and comprising the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and the final goal according to each vehicle. The Shravakas, Arhatship, Pratyeka Buddhas, Arhatship, and the Bodhisattvas become Buddha. And then there are certain practices called the 37 factors of enlightenment, and within that you also do the meditation on the impermanence nature of our life, body and so forth, and also feelings, sensations, and then the meditation on selflessness and of the changing nature of mind, and also selflessness. And we can develop the mindfulness, establishment of mindfulness on the basis of these four objects. And then when you reach the path of seeing, you overcome the different 108 different delusions that are to be overcome by the path of seeing. And this is in accordance with the study of Prajnaparamita, Abhisamaya, Alamkara. And then you have the Eightfold Noble Path: right livelihood, right thinking, right resolve, right concentration, right wisdom, and so forth. Right effort, right concentration, and so forth. So Islam is going through the development, the part which deals with the development of concentration. Think about concentration. Where you develop concentration pertaining to form and formless realms. So in order to develop the concentration of the form realms, you need to see the grossness of the experiences and the desire realm, and see the experiences of form realm as being subtler and more peaceful and so forth, and then you would aspire to reach that goal. And then also compared to the formless realms, the experiences of the formless realms, the experiences of the form realms are grosser and so forth, and then you aspire the higher ones. And then there's also with regard to these negative emotions, there are those to be overcome by the path of meditation. Path of meditation here, what is already covered is about the mundane level of path of meditation, and then there is a path of meditation which is an area at the superior area level. So when you reach the path of accumulation, you are able to overcome so much non-virtues or sins and so forth. You are able to also attain what is known as the continuity of the Dharma, concentration of the continuity of the Dharma, and you are able to hear teachings from various Buddhas in different Buddha fields, and then after the path of accumulation, you enter into the path of preparation or path of application, where you attain the combined experience of vipassana and shamatha. And within this path of preparation, there are 4 stages, which are known as the forbearance, the peak, the heat, heat, peak, then forbearance, and the supreme Dharma. And then at the end of the supreme Dharma, the path of preparation called the supreme Dharma, where you have actually developed your insight into emptiness to such a point that there is a very little dualistic appearance, although it is still there. And then right after that, as you stay focused on emptiness, then you do away with all dualistic appearances, duality, and you enter into the path of seeing, where you actually have the direct experience of emptiness and overcome the negative emotions that are to be overcome by that path, and you reach the path. So the first moment of that path is the uninterrupted path of seeing, concentration, totally absorbed in emptiness. And then when you overcome the delusions to be overcome by that very path which serves as the antidote to these delusions, then you reach the path of seeing called thoroughly liberated path of seeing. And then after that, so these explanations are in accordance with the study of Prajaparamita subject. So within the negative emotions, of course, there are different ways of considering them as common and uncommon negative emotions. So there may be a difference in presenting them according to different systems as well. There may be different subtleties, difference in subtlety. And then after the path of seeing, you are able to reach the path of then you come out of the meditation on which is totally absorbed in emptiness. You come out of that meditation into the post-meditation session or period of the path of seeing, and then after that you enter into the path of meditation, where you go along the 9 stages or the grounds of bodhisattvas, and then you finally culminate into the Buddhahood. So within the Buddhahood, there is the form, body, and the Dharmakaya, the wisdom Dharmakaya and the Tathata Dharmakaya, and Sabhava Dharmakaya, and then there are the 2 form dimensions of Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. So each of these, of course, the Dharmakaya, wisdom Dharmakaya, has its own substantial cause that comes from the very basic subtle mind. And then in the Tantra, we also have the substantial cause of the form body. And so, of course, in terms of the Tantra, without having received any kind of Tantric initiations or abhishek, then you will not be allowed, you are not allowed to practice Tantra as such, and therefore the subtle explanations of the subtle body and the mind and so forth will not be revealed until you are fit for that. And so according to Maitreya, in Abhisamaya Alamkara, refers to talks about the 4 bodies of the Buddha: Svabhavakaya, Jnanakaya, then Nirmanakaya, and Sambhogakaya. So Svabhavakaya is that state of having overcome all the delusions or defilements that are within our mind, and that is only in the Buddhas, within the Buddhas. So Svabhavakaya of the Buddhas and Jnanakaya of the Buddhas are only accessible, directly accessible amongst the Buddhas themselves and not to any other beings. And so Dharmakaya is the source of the Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Sambhogakaya, from there the Nirmanakaya is manifested. And the Sambhogakaya form of when you are in the Sambhogakaya of a Buddha, you are surrounded not by any ordinary beings, not even ordinary bodhisattvas, but bodhisattvas who have reached the path of seeing and beyond, the Arya bodhisattvas. And then the teaching that the Sambhogakaya form of Buddha gives is only Mahayana teachings, and this Sambhogakaya form of Buddha remains until the end of samsara, and it is always adorned by the 32 major marks and 80 minor marks of a great being. Whereas the Nirmanakaya form of Buddha goes through, there are different forms of Nirmanakaya, and then the supreme Nirmanakaya form of Buddha, the emanation form that arises or that is manifested by the Sambhogakaya, goes through the 12, what is known as the 12 deeds of a Buddha, such as taking birth, then going through the process of growing up in a royal family and so forth, and then doing the 6 years austerity practice, and then becoming enlightened under the Bodhi tree, and then giving teachings, and finally passing away and so forth. So these 4 forms of Buddha can be summarized into 2, and which are form body and the Dharma body. So the Jnanakaya and Svabhavakaya are subsumed into Dharmakaya, and then the Nirmanakaya and Sambhogakaya are subsumed into form body or Rupakaya. So the quality of Buddha is such that even each pore of a Buddha's body is able to actually see everything or perceive everything. So Nirmanakaya form of Buddha can appear in different varieties of forms. In some places the Buddhas can manifest as giving teachings and so forth. In other places and realms they can appear as passing away and give and so forth. So the quality of the Buddha's speech is such that it can actually give teachings in accordance, at the same time, simultaneously in accordance with the dispositions, mental dispositions, interests and so forth of the disciples. And then the Buddhas are able to know the different faculties of different beings, what is needed for certain and not needed for others. They can teach accordingly. And then there are different qualities of the Buddha, such as for fearlessnesses. The Buddhas are free from all kinds of doubts and suspicion and so forth, and they can proclaim to be fully enlightened without any fear. So Buddhas are also full of compassion to all sentient beings, which is also a unique quality of the Buddha, to be able to be compassionate at all the time towards sentient beings. And so Buddhas are always absorbed in meditation on emptiness, while being able to see everything, whatever there is to be known and to be perceived at the same time. And then they have unforgettable memory.
There
are, in other words, 18 different qualities of the Buddha which are unique to them. And then there is the quality of compassion. So here His Holiness mentions that he has written about the ground level reality of things and how to progress on the basis of understanding the reality on the ground level, how to progress along that path and then reach enlightenment, Buddhahood, and after reaching Buddhahood, how the Buddhas are actually helping other sentient beings to go through the same kind of paths, and so that they also become liberated and become omniscient and so forth. So now, after the opening of the Eye of Wisdom for the youth, then His Holiness goes through the history of how Buddhism spread to Tibet with the help of Indian pundits and Tibetan translators, such as translator Vairocana and so forth. So during the 23rd 37th king of Tibet, Shisong Detsen, the Master Shanti Rakshita was invited to Tibet, and together with Padmasambhava, the great Master Padmasambhava and so forth, and established Buddhism firmly on the soil of Tibet. And at that time, they also set up the monastic system, and also the tantric practitioners, and the Shilendra Bodhi, Dana Shila, and Ratnakara Jana, and Janasena, Indian Panditas. And then, when with the help of Tibetan translators like Verachana and so forth, they started translating Buddhist texts into Tibetan. And where the terms, the Buddhist terms, did not exist in Tibet, they actually coined new terms. And so, in this way, they spread the Dharma on the Tibetan soil, and within the spread of the Dharma, in spread of the Dharma in Tibet, there are two phases. One is called Ngadar, or the spread earliest dissemination, and then the later dissemination. So thanks to these great masters, the dissemination of Buddhism occurred in Tibet. The earlier and later disseminations. In the later dissemination, there are masters like Atisha, Indian masters like Atisha, Shakyashri, and so forth, who also helped to establish the monastic tradition, and Tibetan masters like Rinchen Sangpo and so forth helped to establish the second or the later dissemination. So when we talk about the later and the earlier and later dissemination, or Ngadar and Chidar, we are making this distinction mainly on the basis of the spread of Tantra, and therefore those who practice the Tantras which spread during the earlier dissemination are called Nyingma, or the older order, and then the later ones are called the new orders. So these Tibetan translators, Dokmi, Tanak, and Gu, and Lodak, the Marpa, the Lotsawa from Lodak, these belong to the later dissemination of the Sarma, or the new tradition. So Kagyu, Sakya, Geluk, Kadam, and these belong to the Sarma tradition. So Marpa Lotsawa studied under great masters, authentic masters of India, and after he received so much teachings from Indian masters, he came back to Tibet and then established the Kagyu tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. And then the Sakyas, with the start of the Konjok Gyalpo, who spread the Lamde tradition, and this tradition came to be called Sakya. And then Atisha Dipamkara Shrijana came to Tibet, and Dromtempa and Ngok, Lotsawa, Lodu Sherab, and so forth. From them came evolved the Kadam tradition in the later dissemination. And then later on, this Kadam tradition was carried continued by Master Tsongkhapa and his disciples like Gyaltsab and Kedrup Je. And it came to be called Geluk tradition. So all these different Tibetan Buddhist traditions have the same goal of Buddhahood, attaining Buddhahood in the end. And they all follow both the Sutra and Tantra, combined system of Sutra and Tantra. Although there are differences in the presentation, so some people have recognized Tibetan Buddhism, identified Tibetan Buddhism as Lamaism, and as if indicating that it's not a true, authentic Buddhism. But in fact, the Buddhism that we have actually came from India with the help of Indian Panditas, great masters, scholars, and the Tibetan translators who worked together to translate the Indian texts into Tibetan. And then we go through the process of study, reflection, or contemplation and meditation. And so whenever there is some doubt or some qualms raised, then the Tibetan Buddhist traditions always go back to the words of the Buddha and the Shastras written by Indian masters. So we'll not have question and answer sessions. The Geshis can deal with that. So I have some audiences. So we'll see tomorrow again.